The debut of the AMR26 was meant to be just another quiet pre-season moment. Instead, it became one of the most obsessively tracked events in the entire motorsport world. Aston Martin's flight from Birmingham to Girona during the opening test wasn't just watched by engineers, it became the second most tracked flight on the planet. Why? Because inside that aircraft was the first Formula One car designed under the full philosophy of Adrian Newey at Aston Martin. And when it finally rolled out of the garage, unpainted, unfinished and barely tested, it immediately looked like nothing else on the grid. Just 5 laps, no performance data, no lap time headlines. Yet the paddock erupted. Engineers whispered, drivers stared, analysts paused. Because even in a broken debut, the AMR26 sent a message. Aston Martin is no longer following Formula One's ideas, they're challenging them. And if you want to understand why this strange, late, radical car could reshape the 2026 season, you're going to want to stay with this video. So make sure you subscribe now, because this story isn't about one car. It's about a power shift in Formula One. To understand why the AMR26 has sent shockwaves through the paddock, you have to ignore the lap count, ignore the timing screens, and even ignore the unfinished bodywork. What Aston Martin revealed in Barcelona was not a car designed to impress in testing. It was a statement of intent, and more importantly, a window into Adrian Newey's thinking under the 2026 regulations. From the very first glance, the AMR26 looks alien. Not refined, not cautious, alien. And in Formula One, that's often the first warning sign that someone has interpreted the rulebook differently. Start at the front of the car. On paper, the AMR26 runs a conventional pushrod front suspension. In reality, it's anything but conventional. The geometry is pushed to an extreme that technical analysts say goes beyond what any rival has dared to attempt. The mounting points sit unusually high on the chassis, while the wheel side elements are kept low, suggesting Aston Martin is aggressively shaping airflow around the front tyre wake, one of the most sensitive aerodynamic zones under the 2026 rule set. This is classic Newey logic. Use suspension not just as a mechanical device, but as an aerodynamic tool. It's a philosophy he perfected at Red Bull, where suspension geometry often dictated airflow pathways rather than simply responding to them. The AMR26 appears to double down on that idea, potentially sacrificing setup flexibility in exchange for aerodynamic purity. Then there are the side pods, and this is where the Red Bull DNA becomes unmistakable. They are deeply sculpted, aggressively undercut, and visually reminiscent of Newey's early 2000s Red Bull concepts. But this is not nostalgia, this is evolution. The side pods appear designed less to feed airflow into the floor and more to control how air leaves the front of the car entirely, managing turbulence before it even becomes a problem. The engine cover tells another story. It is extremely tight, arguably tighter than anything Aston Martin has ever attempted. That level of compression suggests radical packaging around the Honda power unit, which immediately raises two possibilities. Either Aston Martin has achieved unprecedented integration with Honda, or it is knowingly accepting thermal risk in exchange for aerodynamic gains. The large rear cooling outlet supports the latter theory. This isn't a car designed with comfort margins, it's designed on the edge. At the rear, Aston Martin has gone equally extreme. The rear suspension is mounted to the team's first in-house gearbox casing, a major shift away from customer dependency. This isn't just a technical upgrade, it's a philosophical one. Aston Martin is no longer borrowing success. It's attempting to manufacture it from the ground up. That choice alone dramatically increases both potential upside and potential failure. And this is where comparisons to Mercedes' infamous 2022 Zero Pod concept become unavoidable. Because radical does not guarantee fast. Mercedes believed it had unlocked the future, and instead spent years trying to escape a conceptual dead end. Aston Martin knows this history. Newey knows it better than anyone. And yet, the AMR26 exists precisely because Aston Martin is willing to take that risk. Why? Because this entire project is built around one assumption. Adrian Newey is worth centering an organisation around. And history suggests that assumption is not reckless, it's rational. Everywhere Newey has gone, championships have followed. Williams, McLaren, Red Bull. But those successes never came instantly. They came after disruption, internal upheaval, and often delayed debuts. Red Bull famously arrived late to tests with Newey-designed cars, and then rewrote competitive order. What makes Aston Martin's case unique is the scale of commitment. Newey is not just the chief designer, he is a shareholder, a managing technical partner, and now the team principal. There is no buffer between vision and execution, no political insulation. If this works, the credit is his. If it fails, the responsibility is also his. The delays tell their own story. By Newey's own admission, Aston Martin didn't get a 2026 model into the wind tunnel until mid-April, 4 months later than most rivals. That suggests one of two uncomfortable truths. Either the pre-Newey technical direction was so distrusted that it was paused entirely, or Newey concluded that whatever work existed was fundamentally flawed and needed replacing from first principles. Either way, Aston Martin effectively sacrificed preparation time for conceptual purity. That gamble now defines the season ahead. There are immediate problems. The AMR26 is reportedly overweight, even accounting for the expected early season excess. Reliability is still unproven. Honda has quietly hinted that its internal combustion engine may not yet match rival manufacturers. And Aston Martin's internal transformation, new wind tunnel, new processes, new leadership, is still ongoing. This is not a team operating at peak efficiency yet. But that may not matter. Because the AMR26 was never designed to be perfect in Barcelona, or Bahrain, or even Melbourne. It was designed to be adaptable. Newey has repeatedly stressed development potential over early optimization. This car is deliberately not boxed into a narrow performance window. Instead, it focuses on fundamentals, floor behavior, airflow consistency, structural integration, knowing that wings, bodywork, and aero surfaces can be aggressively evolved once real-world data arrives. That philosophy aligns with what several teams have already admitted. The cars seen in early testing are effectively prototypes, launch-spec machines. The real performance race begins weeks later, not days. And that's where Aston Martin believes it can strike. George Russell called the AMR26 pretty spectacular. Fernando Alonso openly dismissed concern about early races, focusing instead on races 7, 10 or 12, and Newey himself has made it clear. The AMR26 that starts the season will look nothing like the one that finishes it. This isn't about winning immediately. It's about owning the development curve. And if Aston Martin gets that curve right, if Newey's interpretation proves directionally correct, the AMR26 may be remembered not as a risky debut, but as the moment Formula One's balance of power quietly began to shift. So here's the real question. Is the AMR26 the first glimpse of Formula One's next dynasty, or the most expensive gamble of the regulation reset? Because if Adrian Newey has read the 2026 rules better than everyone else, this season might not be about who's fastest now, but who understood the future first. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss any of our latest videos.